Alright, so picture this. You're on a date with a girl who's a 10 out of 10. Banging, dinner goes well, she has a great personality, and then you tell her, let's go back to my place. She says, fuck yeah. So you get back to your place, you're getting kind of busy, you're making out, and then she says, let me go use your bathroom real quick. You're like, of course. And there you are waiting, and waiting, and waiting, only to find out that she jumped out of the window. That is what I feel about Tokimitsu as a character. Because the blue and blue lock obviously stands for blue balls. Out of all the characters in Blue Lock, to me the biggest character that writing wise got completely hoed has to be Tokimitsu. I'm talking about Rock Lee levels of being straight up hoed by the writer. The thing that makes Tokimitsu so upsetting is that he was never really defeated. You see, Blue Lock characters fall into 3 different categories. Complete and other fodder, never scored a goal, never did anything, at most they're just relegated to defensive position if they even get to play at all. Or to be more precise, not all of them are necessarily fodder. I wouldn't call Raichi a fodder, for example, because he does play in a very integral role, but you know what I mean. 2, obviously high scoring players who are main characters. The only exception is Reo Mikage, who is very much a main character, but just not really much of a big scorer. And lastly, Blue Lock characters that may have scored a goal or 2, but it was obviously circumstantial to say the least. I'll give you a few examples. Think of, for example, the goals from Kunigami or Yukimiya. They were obviously there to kind of progress the rivalry between Isagi and Kaiser. And another example is the goal from Sendao. Now, I think the plot relevance from Sendao's goal was either one of 2 things. Either 1, maybe Sendao is more important down the line, and they needed some way to justify him making it to the top 23. Or 2, and this is more likely, Baro and Uber's need to defeat Manchan City to sort of set up Nagi's sort of comeback. But if once again Baro won with a hat trick, that would have been A, too unrealistic, and B, it would have essentially knocked out Itoshi Rin and Isagi from realistically in the top spot in the Neo Egoist League. However, what makes those goals also unique is that there was an element of luck. Now, I don't need to explain that that isn't necessarily a negative thing, as the show has shown several times. Luck is a lot more complicated than it sounds. However, point is, without Isagi, Kunigami, and Yukimiya probably weren't scoring any of those goals, and if it wasn't for Baro, Sendao probably wouldn't have gotten that chance to score either. But what does any of this have to do with the idea that Tokimitsu was never quote-unquote defeated, and what does that even mean? Well, from the very start of the series, whenever we've seen someone have a lot of potential to really be a threat, they always need to lose in order for them to get relegated a few slots down. The more obvious examples are very early on. Think of the Wanama twins or Okawa, who once they were defeated, they essentially never really came back. Or even people like Itoshi Rin or Baro. When they were first introduced, they were head above heels better than everybody else. Like, it wasn't even a competition. Remember, Baro pretty much defeated all of Team Z essentially by himself. And Rin completely embarrassed Nagi, Bachida, and Isagi, who, yeah, it was still early on the second selection, but they weren't nobodies either. It took them a few defeats from them going to obviously better than everybody else to at least within Isagi's range. Even though Itoshi Rin technically never lost a match until very recently, he still at least internally took a lot of blows from Isagi. And lastly, there are players like Nikki Iko and Ryu. They were players who were very organically able to transition into defenders, and even for example someone like Ryu, who was arguably better than Isagi when they first met, but again his transition from striker to defender was done so smoothly that it just fit narratively. Another example was someone like Zantetsu. Even though he was one of the best scorers within his stratum, he still nonetheless finished his time in the first selection losing to Team Z. Additionally, in the second selection, we see he loses his match against Chigiri, Nagi, and Baro. But at least in every second selection game that he played, he did manage to score a goal at least. But then comes the U20 where he unfortunately gets to the bench and doesn't really play a single minute. Although he is one of my favorite characters, I bring him up because that's a good example of somebody who kind of gradually goes from being top dog down to fodder at this point. However, Tokimitsu does not fit into any of these categories. The reason I say Tokimitsu doesn't fit into any of these categories is that he has actually never lost. In fact, he only just recently lost technically. And secondly, he scored his goal against Bachira, Isagi, and Nagi pretty much by himself. First of all, he stole the ball from Bachira, which no one else has been able to do in the series, by the way. Literally not Baro, not Itoshi Rin, but strictly just Tokimitsu. He then rams through Isagi, flipping him like an omelet, and scoring his goal. My man's is honestly playing the wrong football. And you know what? That's it. He never does anything else meaningful. He doesn't get shut down by somebody else. He doesn't even really gradually falls off. He just vanishes into thin air. Then in the second game, he's completely checking bottle by himself and throwing strays at everybody. And what's very disappointing is that he is such an interesting character. His neurotic style and his sort of split personality is super unique to him and only him. Like the whining aspect of him is like Igarashi, except that Igarashi was actually decent at the fucking game. And then watching him do a 180 while Isagi's doing his own 180s up in the air, absolute cinema. I just really wish he would have gotten more relevance in his PXG versus Bastard Munich match. Like, I'm sorry, what was the point of Charles Cavalier? He is a definition of a whole lot of nothing. Of someone who can talk a lot and say nothing at the same time. There was never a moment where I was entertained or intrigued with the character of Charles Cavalier. I'm not even pronouncing his name right, maybe I am, I don't know, I don't really care to be honest. The literal only point of that character is to demonstrate that Itoshi Rin could also be exciting. Because Charles hated him originally because he found him a boring, too logical player, and meanwhile he loved Shidao. But then Itoshi goes berserk mode, Charles loves it, he passes him the ball, he scores a goal, and the plot is just trying to say essentially, hey, Itoshi Rin can discard logic if he needs to and go wild. Like as if the imagery, the art, and the fact that he has his tongue sticking out wasn't enough to tell us that this guy can go full demon mode. But yeah, that's my take on Tokimitsu. I just really hope in the future he gets utilized more often. I just want to say I appreciate you guys subscribing and the love you've been giving to my videos recently. I love the comments. I love debating. Please comment here. I still would like for you to subscribe now as well to keep the hype train going. Honestly, this has been a very good week for me, and I really want to say I appreciate everybody. The subscriptions have been good enough to keep Diddy away, but you never know when you might come back, so please keep subscribing. Oh god.